Let's shoot with a bunch of different cameras and a wireless lav and sync all of them up like magic. This would have taken an hour and a glass of whiskey, but now it takes this long. Using the multi-port of the FX30 and the FX3, we can actually bake the timecode into the metadata of the clip, and we don't have to jam sync the timecode with the audio port and potentially deafen yourself while you're editing. Let's go over my timecode workflow here, and for this I will be using the FX6, the FX3, and the FX30, as well as a wireless lav. Before we set anything up, we'll have to use the Tentacle Sync app. You can technically sync all of these together by plugging in the USB-C ports and linking them manually, but it's a little time consuming, and when you see how fast it is to use the app instead, you will be definitely using the app to sync in the future. It's nice that we have a manual way to connect all these timecode devices together, but if you shut them off and have to turn them back on, you have to manually link all of these up together, or you push one button in the app and all of them are synced up. So let's start by downloading the Tentacle Sync app. After opening the app, you'll turn on all of your devices, connect and name them, and then the fun part starts. You can connect the Sync E to your cameras. Now we can connect our Sync E's to our cameras. The Sony FX3 and FX30 can use the Tentacle Sync multi-cable to 3.5mm cable. And this is nice because we don't need to buy Sony's more expensive $50 timecode cable and then use the BNC cable to a 3.5mm to get it to their Tentacle Sync. We can just use this $20 3.5mm that goes into the Tentacle Sync, and then the USB-C side goes into, or the multi-USB cable goes into the multi-USB port. When it comes to connecting our Sync E to our FX6, this is much more straightforward since the FX6 has a BNC timecode dedicated port. All we're gonna need is a BNC connector to the 3.5mm, and that's it. No adapters are needed here. There is a little bit of setup to get timecode displaying correctly if you haven't used it before, so let's quickly dive into the FX3 and FX30 menus. These are the same for both cameras. Make sure Setup, Display Option, TC-UB Display Option is set to TC. And in the shooting menu, the TC-UB timecode run is set to free run. If you're shooting RAW with these cameras, in External Output menu, select HDMI Output Settings, and make sure Timecode Out is selected. I'm pretty sure this is off by default. Now we should be able to see timecode in the top of our frame. If you can't see the correct timecode, don't worry, we will actually sync all of these devices in the next step. To get timecode working on our FX6, we'll go into the main menu, TC Media, Timecode, and Mode is preset, and Run is set to free run. And then Display Select is set to timecode. Then in Monitoring, Display On Off, set timecode to on. Now we should see timecode in the bottom left-hand side of our monitor. If you are shooting RAW, make sure to go back into the menus and turn on TC Media, HDMI TC Out to on. Now we have timecode metadata baked into our RAW recordings. If this was helpful, please give it a like and subscribe because this took me a long time to figure out. When it comes time for our lav mic, we're using the Track E, and this is a very similar setup process to the Sync E's. So we're gonna start by adding this device in the app. Add this device to the app and it will show up with a list of options. The first thing I did was go into Settings and enable 32-bit float recording and properly name the mic. Just a heads up here, whatever you name this device in the app is what the file name will read. So if you name this maybe a snarky name, that will show up in all of the recordings. You know, like I named mine Yellow, so my file recordings are yellow _001 _002 and so forth. So if you name this something snarky and you're giving it to a client, just be aware that that will make it to the file names. Now you can record and be able to sync your footage with timecode, and everything will be synced together, and it's that nice 32-bit float audio now. Nothing is coming back to your camera where you have to input it to your camera's feed. All of this is recorded on the included 16GB memory card with the Track E. When it comes time for the most important part, you can sync these devices together in two different ways, but I find working with the app is much faster and easier. It's nice that we have an appless experience if we need to sync all these devices together and my phone dies, for example, but still I'm a big fan of using the app. With all the cameras on the same frame rate, we can sync our timecode. When it comes to selecting a timecode value, you can really use any value, but I like to try to use the time of day. Hitting start will connect all of our devices and send timecode to them, and we're done. Now, if everything went according to plan, we should be seeing the app output timecode to our cameras and the monitors displaying the correct values. One thing to note here, if you unplug these while they are generating timecode to all of your devices, your camera will slowly drift out of sync with all of your other cameras. So it's really important to leave these boxes plugged in while you're filming. Using the app while recording, you're able to start and stop recording, listen back to recordings, and listen to a feed of the audio. However, the feed is delayed and it's for reference purposes only. I like checking the audio to make sure there's no rustling or distortion happening to the mics. After the shoot, we can bring all of our footage back to our computer, and I will be using the Tentacle Sync app to generate an XML file that we can sync all of our footage together very quickly, and then use that XML file in our editor of choice. For this example, we'll be using Premiere Pro. First, input all of your footage and audio with the same timecode to the software. You can drag the footage and audio to the left-hand side of the software. This will analyze all of the metadata and tell you if there are any problems. Since we're all using file timecode that's embedded in the metadata, we won't be using any audio TC. Going through each of our assets, we want to see a green dot by file TC, so we know there are no issues and everything will sync up how we want them to. The final step before syncing, I like to push the show info button to see the green flag that means there is another clip that matches the timecode of this clip. If you shut all your cameras off and you're just recording B-roll with another camera, this will be marked as red, which that probably isn't a big deal. But if your main A-roll has a red flag next to it, make sure to check you have all of your files actually imported. Now for the moment of truth, pressing the Sync Map button automatically generates a timecode with all of our clips aligned and based on their timecode. And it happens pretty fast too. This was in real time. Now we can export this as an XML and use it in our software of choice. Again, we're just going to use Premiere Pro for the sake of example. With a fresh Premiere Pro project, import our XML file and there will be a folder with assets and then a sequence with all of our files aligned via timecode. This is a huge time saver. One thing to know, if you turn one of these devices off, they will start to lose their accurate timecode. So anytime you shut these off, like between takes or you go to lunch or something, whenever you start these again, they need to be resynced in the app. And that's another reason why I like the app so much, because I can turn all of these on. They don't have to be right next to my phone, just within Bluetooth range. And I can press sync all, and it will sync all of the timecode to all of these devices automatically. Another thing here is to make sure you know what kind of timecode your cameras can accept. These are all the Sony cinema cameras that can accept metadata timecode. But if you're using a very similar camera to the FX3, like the A7S III, that desperately needs some updates, the A7S III can't accept metadata timecode. You have to audio jam sync with the audio port. So you have to take this into the 3.5mm jack, and now you lose one track of audio and you have one track of scratch audio. It's really frustrating that there isn't just a standard timecode port on all cameras. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like and check out this BTS breakdown video. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Now we have timecode baked into the metadata of our raw recordings.